What's going on, guys? It's your boy Ed here, along with my buddy Colt. Say hey, Colt. Ron's also here. He's currently in the back right now, loading up the rest of the car. So we're at the store, emptying it out for precautionary reasons. Not necessarily because we're afraid that the riots are going to keep going on this week, but mostly we're just trying to be realistic, especially with the history our country has of not serving justice specifically to the black community. So honestly, we're just trying to take precautions, especially because insurance companies are not covering looting right now, a lot of them. So we're taking extra precautions. We're emptying all inventory, all artwork and everything out of the store. As you can see, typically the the paint display, the hat display, all the clothing is usually full, but we had to move some of the racks to the back. All the inventory is gone. We moved it out of here. So that's kind of the status of where we're at right now. I gotta go help Ron clear out the rest of the stuff, so I'll catch you guys in a minute. Today I'm gonna introduce you guys to the other half of Ewkuks, but I'm gonna let him do that for himself.
Hey guys, I'm Ron. We just wanted to take this time to address the Los Angeles riots that happened here on Fairfax Avenue on Saturday, May 30th. Before we do get started though, I want to thank all our supporters, everyone who's been supporting us along the way, our friends, family, everyone who's been checking in on us the past few days, offering help, everyone who's yelling at us to leave that day. Thank you guys so much. We could not keep on doing this without you. In case you guys didn't know, we are a art gallery and clothing brand hybrid. We're based out of graffiti and street art with a brick and mortar shop here on Fairfax Avenue in Los Angeles. You also may know that our street was the epicenter for the Los Angeles riots on Saturday, May 30th. So we just wanted to share with you what happened, what we saw, and our personal perspective.
So that morning of May 30th, one of the first things that both of us realized was the outpouring number of support that the affected businesses of the looters and riots in Minneapolis the night before, that they were still standing in solidarity with the Black Lives Movement matter. This made us both realize that we wanted to make sure that we also publicly showed our support of the movement because it's something that we adamantly believe in. So we decided to come in that morning with the intention of putting signs of support so that anyone that walks, drives by, knows that they are not in this alone and that there are people supporting them. By the time we got here, we realized that there was a protest that was ending on Fairfax. So after we put up the signs, we had actually brought my 8-month-old puppy Colt with us. We decided to leave him in the shop and go join the march and stand in solidarity with the Black Lives Matter. By the time we got there, the police had already started to arrive. And we could feel the tenseness in the air because the police came out in tactical gear, and it was very clear that it wasn't that they were there to support the movement, but they were actually there to defend the community from the protesters. Once the riots started to break out, we decided that we needed to come back and get Colt at least out of here. On the way back, Ron actually went ahead of me because I stayed back to document a little bit of the rioting that was going on. During that time, I did witness myself 4 to 5 stores being broken into and looted. That's when I ran back to help Ron load up the car so that we can get Colt out of there. Just as we were about to drive away from the back parking lot, we noticed someone running towards his car parked in the same lot with the box that he had obviously just looted. It was at this moment that I got a funny feeling, and I don't know why, but I told Ron that we should go back inside real quick just to check what was going on. And so I told him to take Colt and go back through the back door when no one was paying attention. And with my camera backpack on, I decided to walk around the block to kind of just get a lay of the land to see what was going on. It was at this moment that I realized that the rioters had lit the actual street of Fairfax on fire. The rioters had blocked off the one end of Fairfax, of the 400 block of Fairfax, and the cops had blocked off the other end of that block. And there was a standoff. There were fires everywhere, people were continuing to loot, so I turned right towards that block first to take a couple of quick pictures. And it was at that moment that I realized that there was a bit of a commotion on the 500 block of Fairfax, which our shop and art gallery is located on. It was at that moment that I realized that one of the rioters was rushing towards one of our neighbor's shop. It's called Apartment 4B, which is a black-owned business, with a hammer, with the intention of breaking in. I started to run towards him, pleading with him to stop, to not do this, when about 8 to 10 other people started rushing that gate with him. It was at this moment that they breached Apartment 4B that I realized that I was outnumbered. So I decided to keep going up the street towards our shop, and at that moment I had to make a decision. On one hand, I could hear my mom and a lot of people telling me that this is a really stupid thing to do, that it's just stuff that could be replaced. But at the same time, I also couldn't stop associating that stuff to all the sacrifices that people made, all the support that people have shown, and outside of the hard work that Ron and myself have put into it. As an art gallery, we represent a lot of artists with a lot of artwork. And as people may know, artwork is more than just a product. It tends to be an accumulation of people's life experiences, trauma, successes. It's a part of their life story. And I didn't want people to be able to just come and take that away from them. And us. So in that moment, I made in retrospect, a foolish decision to stand and defend the flagship. So I stood outside with my backpack on, and I actually carry around a nightstick because I go night shooting by myself a lot for just defensive purposes, just in case. So I stood outside the gate in front of the store, while Ron stood behind the gate inside the store with Colt as a second layer of defense. Within a minute of standing in front, the same rioter who broke into Apartment 4B with a hammer started walking towards Ewkuks. He started screaming, "They can't catch us all," and he and I made eye contact. Immediately, I just started shaking my head no, and as he continued to approach towards me, raising the hammer up to start attacking the gate, I just said to him as calmly as I could, "Not today, keep walking right now." I said it twice. He looked at me a little bit in confusement, and luckily for me, he just went down the street to the next shop. Unfortunately, that was Flight Club. From that moment on, I continued to defend the shop from 4 other people who tried to break in. And each of them, I don't know how, but was lucky enough to just plead with people to not do this. I realized that there was a crowd of people trying to break into Flight Club, but there was actually a larger crowd of predominantly black protesters who were standing in the middle of the street, pleading with the looters and rioters to not do this, especially to minority and black-owned businesses. It was at this moment that I realized that part of the reason that I decided to defend the shop outside of just the accumulation of people's life experiences and sacrifices that went in here was the feeling of injustice that I felt multiple times throughout the day. First off, standing in protest, demanding justice for a man who was slain in public in broad daylight, and then compounded with when the police arrived in tactical gear, acting as if we are a threat to the community, and then specifically standing there watching as the protesters and knowing that the only ability and the only power that they had was their voice to protest the looters and rioters. I realized that at that moment that I had the chance to exercise my right to defend something that I worked hard for. Because that's the funny thing about injustice, right? Even if we may not understand the Black experience, I can guarantee that most people have felt some sort of injustice in their life. Whether it was being blamed for something you didn't do, or feeling like someone who was supposed to back you up didn't. You know, to us, even a small degree of what that feeling of helplessness feels like, what it feels like to not have control of the situation, what it feels like to feel betrayed because the people who were supposed to have your back didn't. All those things turn into different emotions, sometimes of anger. A lot of times it brings up this thing in human nature where they decide to stand up and fight, to take matters into their own hands, to take justice into their own hands. And I knew at that moment that I had an ability to defend what a lot of people have worked really hard for. So from there, I continued to defend the shop from 4 other looters until the police started to shoot flashbangs and smoke grenades into the crowd. And as you can see in this video, I'm not very aware of what's happening outside of my immediate area for safety reasons. And it wasn't until people literally started screaming at me to run that I had to run around the block to the back of the store and get back into the store from there on. And from inside the shop, that is when we noticed a couple of funny things happen. First off, we noticed a lot of people who were not a part of the protest that day, as they were pulling up, majority non-black people pulling up in high-end cars like Mercedes and Beamers, as they were joining in on the looting of Flight Club a couple doors down. Even more disturbing than that was, as you can see in this video, the cops are allowing these non-black looters who are pulling up in these expensive cars to just drive off with all this merchandise, some of whom aren't even bothering to wear a mask or hide their identity. And they are shooting flashbang grenades into the crowd of black looters. Now, as business owners who stood in solidarity with Black Lives Matter, demanding justice for George Floyd and countless others, and then going from a peaceful protest to immediately defending our shop from looters and rioters, there is one message we want to make sure that is very loud and clear. And that people's lives are always more important and valuable than any materialistic thing, period. Regardless of how hard we worked or how much people have sacrificed for us to be able to live our dreams, at the end of the day, one life is worth more than any business or any materialistic thing. Because hitting rock bottom is still better than being buried 6 feet under that rock. Because we still have a chance to live and continue to pursue our dreams. And in the first week, these protests and all these united voices standing in solidarity have allowed us to have all 4 cops who were involved in George Floyd's murder to be charged. Minneapolis has completely outlawed the use of chokeholds as a tactic. LA is defunding their police department by up to $150 million and redirecting those funds towards positive community programs for the black community. Minneapolis is also committed to defunding their whole police department so they could build a community safety program from the ground up. But right now, more than ever, it is extremely important that we do not return to normalcy and that we continue on this fight. Because we are still living in a world where Breonna Taylor has not even an inkling of justice for her. Because we're still living in a world where a white man injured by police officers leads to corrective action within days. But we had to set the country on fire and have the rest of the world join us in protest just to get the officers who clearly were a part of murdering George Floyd to be charged. We lit the world on fire and there still is no justice for Breonna Taylor. And that is the reason why that this fight is extremely important, because it is obvious that in this country, in this day and age, in the year 2020, that black lives still do not hold the same weight as white lives. Because black deaths are not newsworthy as white deaths are, because justice for black deaths needs to be demanded while justice for white injuries are promptly and swiftly carried out. It is extremely obvious that things are not equal here. It is important to keep fighting because we are fighting against hundreds of years of systemic racism that is built into the DNA of our country. Our country has allowed Tulsa and Rosewood to happen, where we literally tried to eliminate any sort of black success. Our country has erased those from history. This isn't a fight that's going to be won overnight, and that is the reason why we cannot return to normalcy until justice has been served and until the system has been fixed or rebuilt. Now, of course, we never condone rioting and looting. It's something that we would never partake in. However, sometimes we do believe that in order to enact change, you have to make those who are complacent with injustice so uncomfortable that they have to act almost out of self-preservation. Basically, what we're trying to say is that do not focus on the riot and looting. Focus on why the rioting and looting is happening. Focus on the movement. Focus on what people are fighting for. So what can we do, right? And especially as non-Black people, the best way that we can support the movement is by first and most importantly, listening to the Black experience and trying to understand. From there, make sure that you're also doing your own research, reading any literature, watch any documentaries, as we've made a couple of suggestions below. Make sure that you are also joining in on the protests, speaking up for injustice, standing in solidarity. Donate to any causes that are fighting for injustices and trying to correct the wrongs. Use your privilege to document the injustices, to keep the police accountable, and use your privilege to shield and save Black lives. Obviously, vote for change, vote for progress, but we also need to start working towards equal representation in our government. Because at the end of the day, each and every one of us needs to be able to look in the mirror and know what side of history we stood on. We thank you guys so much for taking the time to watch this video, but for all the support that you have given us throughout the years. We're not going anywhere. The store is temporarily closed and emptied out for safety purposes, but we are working really hard in order to gather up a plan with the rest of the community as well to figure out a plan to reopen as soon as possible. We thank you guys once again for everything. We'll see you guys on the next one.
All good. Yeah. Give me a heads up. Let me know if something is going on. Yeah, do you think everything is fine?
We're trying to not cops are here, but also we were trying to get like one, I think.
Not sure how the framing is on this one, but Ron and I, we are on our way to Gandex for a recording of his podcast, Clean Break, Ron and I. So we're on our way there now.
Hello.
Hi.
Sorry.
This is an auction we're doing. It actually ends tomorrow to raise money for 4 different fundraisers.
By the time this comes out, this will already be sold.
Yeah, sorry.
unless you bought it.
Everyone listening, I got the owners of Ewkuks here. I have Ed and Ron. Just so everyone can get voices down, why don't you go ahead and say hi there, Ron. How are you?
Hi, how's it going?
I'm good. That's your
This
voice.
is Ron. Yeah.
Oh, it's Ron. How about you, Ed?
What's going on, guys? It's Zed.
Oh, hey, Ed.
Hi.
Ed and Ron here. Well, let's start this thing off. Very first thing.